technological advances that were made during this age of exploration, otherwise known as age of discovery, so that you can really track all the different technologies that were invented that helped sailors. Why did they need help? Well, even just imagine the day. If you were to go out on a boat, whether it be a sailboat, rowboat, yacht, whatever it is, even if you had some technology with you, it's still pretty scary if you don't know what you're doing. So picture hundreds of years ago, in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, hopping on a boat, especially a newly created type of boat like the caravel, using the sails, using the wind patterns, using things like the astrolabe or the sextant and the newly magnetic compass, using those things to get you from point A to point B, and you don't even know what point B necessarily is because nobody's been there before. It's a scary endeavor to say the least. So it was very difficult to go out and sail, but nonetheless, people still did it. So we already mentioned the technologies that people use, but why did people start sailing in the first place? That's a good question to ask, and it's one that's very vital for this unit. Why did people explore in the age of exploration? Why did people like Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus, Bartholomew Diaz, why did all these people risk their lives to sail around to different places? Here's a key question for you. Why did people in the age of exploration even want to explore? So we've already discussed the different technologies that were used in the age of exploration, otherwise known as the age of discovery. And we looked at those because it was a very dangerous thing to go out and sail. Even if you were to go out into the ocean right now on any type of boat, pick your choice, you're going to want to know what you're doing. But picture hundreds of years ago, in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, when people like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama and Bartholomew Diaz are sailing, it's a scary thing. It's fairly new, and they're going to places that nobody's ever been to before, that they've never seen with their own eyes. They're the ones that are actually mapping out how to get to these places. So it's extremely scary to say the least. But why do it? Why risk your life just to go out and explore? And some people will give you the answer, oh, well, because the human race always wants to explore. Well, that might be true, but that's not a sufficient answer. And it's not a sufficient answer because I don't know too many people that would risk their lives just for the sake of curiosity. Because we all know the proverb, right? Curiosity killed the cat. So it's not just that. So we're asking the question right now, why sail? Why explore? And it really comes down to three key components, three key ideas, three key reasons why sailors sailed, why explorers explored. And they're usually broken down into three G's: God, glory, and gold. So let me briefly explain those. In terms of God, it's not like they were sailing to reach God. It's not like they were sailing because God told them, you must sail across the world. You must sail on this ocean. No. But rather, there were a handful of missionaries who would actually join on expeditions, including Christopher Columbus's and others, in order to go and evangelize or spread the gospel, spread their religion, usually more often than not Christianity, to what they deemed uncivilized worlds. So they would go and hop on these boats because they believed it was their moral duty, their moral obligation to go and civilize the uncivilized. And so that's when people really run into issues even with Christopher Columbus, because when he reaches the Western world, although not North America, he reaches more towards Hispaniola and the Caribbean islands. But when Christopher Columbus actually reaches those places, people are correct in assuming that they did try to spread the gospel to those tribes, but they're incorrect in that they always did it the best way. But regardless, there are people that do seem to want to spread Christianity all over the globe. And they read that within the Bible. So God, or proselytizing, evangelizing, was a very big component for people to want to go and explore. It was a big motivation. What about glory? Well, simply put, glory is to get fame for your own name, but also for that of your country. So the person or country that's financing your trip, usually a king or a queen, you're going to want to bring them some glory. You're going to want to put the proverbial flag down on the ground and say, this is for Portugal, this is for Spain, this is for England, this is for France, and so on and so forth. But you're also going to want to try to make a name for yourself. You want to be the best of the best. You want to be the best explorer. You want to be the best sailor that there ever was. So there's also that motivation. But some of those aren't even close to the most important motivation. The third one, gold. Gold was the most important motivation for people going out and sail. Now, is it really that simple that people were going to sail just to find actual gold? Well, yes and no. They were trying to go and find gold in some instances, and it certainly didn't hurt, right? But gold also means in terms of wealth, in terms of building trade relations, building trade routes, finding different areas and different markets available to trade to, and different supplies to bring back. You see, a lot of students get this confused with, if we say gold, we mean that they're literally trying to go and find bricks of gold, like gold doubloons in a cave or in a mine or something like that, a treasure chest from pirates. And though that's certainly the case on some instances where they did hear of gold on a certain place, whether it be myth or factual or something that they just heard, that is certainly true. However, it wasn't true all the time, and it wasn't the only thing that they're looking for. By and large, a lot of Europeans at this time are looking to establish more trade routes. They want to go and find more markets, more supplies to bring back to their own place and sell for a higher price. So one of the places that's instrumental during this time period is India. It was like the Spice Island, India and China, the Asian continent. Europeans are going to want to try to find ways to get to the Asian continent, specifically India, because they know that they have heard of these spices, some of which were even talked about from Marco Polo a few hundred years prior, around the 1200s, 1300s. Don't quote me on that time period, though. But spices were extremely important. And it's not just to have flavor to your food, but spices were also used in preservation of food so that it wouldn't spoil as long. Plus, they were already buying some of this stuff using the only real established land route from Asia to Europe. And that's known as the Silk Road. The Silk Road was this huge, massive land route that went all the way and connected Asia to Europe. So if you wanted to go and get spices, if you wanted to go and get supplies from India, you wanted to get pepper or even certain types of sugar or cinnamon, these things that were unheard of in Europe. If you wanted to go and get those things, you needed to travel quite far to go and pick it up, pay for it, and then bring it back. But when that happens, you're going to have middlemen in between. You're going to have people meet you halfway, which means the cost of the item is constantly going to be going up. Why? Well, let's just imagine it this way. Let's imagine we have person X. We're going to call him Shane. Let's imagine we have Shane wants to buy some Sprite Zero. But in order to get it, he needs to travel pretty far. We'll say he needs to travel all the way to California, which is across the United States. So he'll either hire somebody to go and pick up the supplies for him and bring it back, in which case he needs to pay those people. So then when he actually gets his Sprite Zero and he wants to sell it to other people, cases upon cases of Sprite, he wants to go and sell it to everybody else in your class. Do you think he's going to sell it for the same price he bought it at? No, he's going to upcharge it. So instead of a can of Sprite being $1, maybe he charges $1.25 so that he makes a profit. But he also has to keep in mind that he paid people to go and pick it up for him. So in which case, he's going to keep in mind, well, I had to pay for, we'll say, Matt to go and pick up the Sprite. So he has to pay Matt, maybe, let's just say for the sake of argument, $2, which is really cheap, but just for the sake of argument. He pays Matt $2 to go and pick it up. Is he really going to want to sell the Sprite for $1.25 and essentially be in debt because he owes Matt even more money than that? No. He's going to find a cost that's beneficial to him and a cost that you'll still buy the Sprite. So maybe he's charging you $2.75 for a can of Sprite, which again isn't a perfect analogy and it's not a perfect example, but I just want you to see that when there's other people involved, prices of the goods are going to go up. In addition, on the Silk Road, it's really dangerous. It is extremely dangerous to travel because you might get ambushed along the way. You might have people set up taxes along the way and say, you need to give us X amount of your goods since you're passing. Almost like the story of the trolls who won't let you pass unless you give them a quarter or give them something that you have or answer a riddle, right? It's going to cost you something. And so when it costs you something to gather the materials that you want to sell, you're going to have to sell those materials at a higher price in order to make your money back and then some, because you want to make a profit. So the European countries at that time realized the Silk Road isn't that reliable. It has a bunch of middlemen in between. It's very dangerous. And then we have to sell our prices extremely, extremely high, and nobody buys them. So really, the only people in Europe at this time who could even get some of these spices and goods are like the extremely, extremely, extremely upper class. The people that are extremely rich, have a lot of money, and can afford it. But even they don't see the cost-benefit ratio there. They don't think that it's actually worth to go and get. But what Europe decides to do, places like Spain and Portugal and even England, what they decide to do is to try to find a water route to India, which really spurred a lot of this exploration. And that's what I mean by gold. Yes, they wanted physical, tangible gold, but they also wanted to establish trade routes. They wanted to establish different places that they could go and sell goods, a new market. They wanted to cut out middlemen so that they could actually make a higher profit. And that's really what I mean by gold. Because it's all about the Benjamins, right? We could hear that in songs today. We could see that in movies. It's all about money. People do things for money. So when you are asked the question, why did people explore in the age of exploration? You should certainly talk about God, glory, and above all else, gold.